the last in the three-part series of this. So over to you, Deborah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. Today we are going to be looking at the supply chain risk in the automotive sector. Over the past 2 to 3 years, supply chain risk has shifted from an emergent to very much a current risk. Supply chain itself and risk encompasses a wide range of factors. So we would look at economic uncertainty, political instability, natural disaster, supplier failures. Today we're going to look at a more pressing threat and a bit more of an emerging one, which is the cyber risk within your supply chain. Most organizations heavily rely on their suppliers to deliver products, systems and services, and a cyber attack within your supply chain can be just as damaging as a direct attack on your organization. The modern car has over 100 million lines of code and 30,000 parts, many of them provided by a third party as part of the manufacturing process, and every one of those is a potential weak link. Identifying the risk can be challenging, as supply chains are often large, complex, and interconnected, and threats can emerge at any point and take many forms, whether they're inherent, introduced, or exploited by the criminals looking for vulnerabilities. First of all, why is the UK automotive sector a target? You contribute to the UK economy in around 93 billion in turnover and 22 billion in value added to the UK economy. You spend around 4 billion each year on R&D. You employ over 198,000 people and over 813,000 across the wider industry. And you contribute 12% to the total UK goods, generating 47 billion in trade every year. So when you look at it that way, you can understand why it's a very lucrative target for cyber criminals. And the risk is growing further as manufacturing are embracing smart factories and bringing operations online, sometimes for the very first time. When you then take a look at the makeup of the UK ecosystem for businesses, the business population, 99.9% are small and medium businesses. And at the start of 2024, the UK government reported 99.2% of those were small businesses with fewer than 50 employees. During 2024, the Information Commissioner's Office, or the ICO, they're responsible for protecting our personal information. In the UK, they reported 33,383 incidents relating to personal data that impacted data records of around 172 million during that 12-month period. Given the makeup of the UK business population and the number of security incidents, it's fair to conclude that SMEs are a prime target in the UK and are critical to the security of the UK automotive chain. Before we can really get into the risk and what they are, you need to be considering ranking the types of manufacturing suppliers that you work with. Most common is to rank them into tiering. You've got tier 1, which is your direct supplier, supplying direct to the manufacturer themselves. Your tier 2 is supplying the tier 1, and then your tier 3 is around kind of raw materials based components, and they're all feeding up that chain to get those parts in and being able to manufacture the car themselves. Alongside suppliers who contribute directly to automotive manufacturing, you then have operational support suppliers such as IT companies like ourselves, software and technology providers, consultancy and advisory services, and then technical support specialists. This makes the supply chain for automotive one of the most complicated and interconnected that we see in any sector in the UK. So what are the types of risks? So you've got your cybersecurity risk. This is the potential for financial loss, disruption to operational reputational damage originating from unauthorized access to your systems and or your data or a data breach. As Laura mentioned, there are 2 other webinars that we have recorded, and they go into a lot more detail in kind of what those risks are, where they come from, and some practical tips on how you can prevent those from happening. So if you want to dig into that a little bit further, those recordings are on the YouTube channel. We then look at operational risk. This is the risk of downtime or disruption to the manufacturing process itself, and caused by an inability to deliver on time the components are part of the supply chain ecosystem. And then finally is your compliance and data protection risk. This starts to look at your intellectual property, prototype leakage, GDPR compliance or non-compliance, and the loss of trade secrets. We look at risk itself. There are kind of three main types of risk. So you've got inherent risk. This is the vulnerability within your supply chain, regardless of any actions that you might take. So it could be a dependency on a certain vendor or supplier. Maybe there's only one of them in the UK, or one within your region, or one that can provide the specific part that you need. And then sometimes it's around the real lack of visibility and control of supply chain, because it does become a huge web when you start looking at how each part is actually manufactured and brought to the factory floor. Introduced risk, as the title indicates, it's a risk that you're bringing into your supply chain, and there are various factors that will contribute to that. These include human error, negligence, and malicious action. And it's worth noting that they can come from both internal and external sources. Examples would include unsecure data sharing of sensitive information, insufficient security measures in place, leaving vulnerabilities that could be exploited, use of compromised or counterfeit components or products, and then failure to perform due diligence on your suppliers. The final one, which is the big one when we start looking at cyber risk, is the exploited risk. So this is the instance where a vulnerability has basically been identified and the criminal is launching an attack to compromise that. And they're looking at the confidentiality, the integrity, or the availability of your business critical systems at that point. Examples include your supplier's infrastructure is used indirectly to attack your system, most likely to occur through email, unauthorized access to your systems and data, or the systems and data of the supplier that you're working with, an insider threat. So that is when an employee, whether they've taken a deliberate action or through human error, has compromised your internal systems, or they've stolen data to be sold on. Some real life examples of how we've seen this happen within the automotive sector. At the end of 2023, going into early 2024, Nissan Australia and New Zealand experienced a cyber attack. It involved unauthorized access to their local IT servers. We don't always get a lot of information on case studies. They'll give us a little window in, but we never really get detailed reports. In February 2022, Toyota had to halt production at several of their manufacturing plants across Japan, and that was very much reported as a significant cyber attack, and it was a cyber attack against one of their suppliers. Not car manufacturing directly, but definitely part of the chain was Arnold Clark. So they were hit on the 23rd of December 2023. It's very common for large-scale, complicated cyber attacks to happen just before a bank holiday or a holiday period. And that's because they are making an educated guess that you're going to have reduced staff working, often junior members of staff, because those shifts get delegated to those who are further down the food chain. And excuse me, they're going to take advantage of the fact that there's not as many people around. So on the 23rd of December, they were hit with a ransomware attack. Arnold Clark have booked the trend and have spoke very openly about exactly what happened. And I've had the pleasure of being at 2 talks by their chief exec, and they really made a step change to be very, very open and transparent. So we've got a little bit more information. 5 to 10% of their data was encrypted, and they made the decision in the early hours of Christmas Eve to pull the plug and actually turn down all of their servers and their entire operation. What that did mean was that as the encryption started, they were turning everything off at about the same time, and that's how they limited that encryption happening only on about 5 to 10% of their data. However, this did mean that none of their systems were available after the Christmas period. No new car deliveries, no car servicing, no MOT, no car rentals, because at that point in time, Arnold Clark, all of their IT infrastructure was all connected, which meant turning one off meant they had to turn the whole lot off. While they've reported they did not pay the ransom, they very much talked about how they negotiated to buy time, but they have admitted since then that the attack cost them somewhere in the region of £50 million, and it took them months to bring all of their services back online. CDK Global, they were attacked twice in June 2024, again involving ransomware. This impacted thousands of car dealerships across the US. Services were resumed around 2 weeks later. The current estimate of the financial losses are expected to exceed $1 billion. and it's rumoured that they did pay a ransom of around $25 million to get that data back. So how can you effectively manage your supply chain? It really becomes an ally in the battle against cyber attacks. And ultimately, what you're looking for is assurances that cyber security is being taken seriously within your supply chain. You will already be doing financial checks, health and safety checks. I would encourage you to say, why are you not doing cyber security checks at that same time? One way to get assurance is to check what accreditations those organisations hold. We would recommend Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001 and TISAC, which we'll go into a little bit more detail on. Cyber Essentials is a great certification scheme. It's there to protect and safeguard you from the most common types of cyber threat, while ensuring that the application of best practices across your IT infrastructure. Most attacks are fairly simple by design, but the state of play is constantly changing and evolving. So as a result, threats can come in many disguises, but with the same end goal to exploit a weakness in your infrastructure to try and get into that infrastructure. Completing and maintaining your C and C plus accreditations really does reduce the risk, and it helps safeguard your organization's processes, people, customers, and finances. Cyber Essentials itself is a self-assessment. It focuses on assessing your technical controls, demonstrates proactive management for cyber threat, and it provides you with, in some cases, free cyber insurance, which is incredibly rare in this day and age. If you've got a turnover less than 20 million, there's a couple of other bits of criteria to that as well. We see a large number of our customers actually able to get this free cyber insurance, which is definitely going to help if you were hit on a small scale basis. Moving up to Cyber Essentials Plus. So this would require an assessor basically coming out and auditing, either done remotely or done on site. And that really is testing what you've answered in your self-assessment. So by default, it does have a bit more gravitas in the industry. That's someone you've not kind of checked your own homework with that. We do it both, as I say, on-site and remote, but it really demonstrates to your employees, customers, stakeholders that you really are taking your cybersecurity seriously. ISO 27001 is the international standard for information security. It's all about building your information security management system, often referred to as your ISMS. The scope includes your IT systems, data, and processes. In simple terms, it's a blueprint that allows you to build a robust and reliable information security management system, helps protect your data, manage your risk effectively, and enhancing and demonstrating your overall security posture. So it looks at risk management, it helps you to identify, assess, and manage information security risks in a more systemic way. Looks at the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of your systems and your data. So confidentiality is protecting it from unauthorized access. Integrity is making sure it's protected from unauthorized change, and the availability is ensuring your systems are available, accessible by authorized employees as and when they need it. It also includes data protection. While it doesn't, it's not focused on GDPR, it does allow you to be able to demonstrate your compliance with the legislation that operates across the UK. And also it is embedded to include continuous improvement. Nothing stands still, and it really drives you to look at your processes and where they can be improved and enhanced on a frequent basis. Moving into TISAC, so this is the information security standard that was developed by the automotive industry for the automotive industry. Originally introduced in 2017, it stands for the Trusted Information Security Exchange. In response to the increasing complexity and interconnectivity of the automotive supply chain. It's based on the VSA, which is the German automotive industry, and it is aligned with ISO 27001. It includes additional controls to cover data protection, prototype protection, third-party risk and availability. It's not just about compliance, it's about collaboration. It's a standard approach that means that you only need to do the assessment once. If you're working directly with an OEM, original equipment manufacturer, all the suppliers are using the same language, and it allows you to assess and share the risk with your supply chain, and you only need to complete that assessment once. I think it's an annual one as well from that point of view. So steps through on how your organisation can identify the scope. So what sites, what processes and what levels. You're building your internal ISMS, leveraging ISO 27001. In fact, they ask where possible that you hold that certification and then build on that certification to add in the additional parts. You would engage with an accredited audit provider, and then you're able to, once that's audited and signed off, you're able to share the results on the TISEC platform, which gives controlled transparency. So it's keeping your data confidential, but it's allowing your supply chain to be able to get in that and have a look and see where you're at from a control point of view. The common pain points that the organisations report is readiness gap. So that's the discrepancy between your skills, knowledge and ability within your own organisation. Particularly tougher for smaller and lower tiered suppliers that maybe don't have the expertise and experience in-house. A cultural change, because this is not a checklist, it's not an IT thing. It really is looking at everything that you do as an organisation. And then the final one, but very important, is about managing that cost versus risk. When we look at anything from a certification point of view, we very much say it's on the prevention side of the house. And we, that all time quote that we hear all the time: prevention is better than cure. It is, but prevention always comes with a cost. So it is about recognizing what is right for your organization, which is why I've talked through the other certifications as well. So what can you do if your suppliers don't hold those certifications? You need to understand your supply chain. Not all suppliers are created equal. And it really is about taking that time, identifying those that are the most critical to you and your services, and remembering it's not just about those that provide products or components or parts as part of the automotive sector, but it's also those suppliers that you are relying on for critical support services to keep your manufacturing going and your business operating. And it's really looking to rank those based on criticality. It should include, you look to include cybersecurity in your contracting process. Asking them some small number of questions will be able to gauge very, very quickly as to what their understanding is and how important they see cybersecurity and information security within their own organisation. Set a minimum cybersecurity requirement. Just make sure that they're justified, they're achievable for your supply chain, and also that you are able to meet those standards. What we see a lot of the time is, well, I expect all of my supply chain to have ISO 27001. That's great. Do you have it? But then also, do you really need your window cleaner to have ISO 27001? No, but you would encourage, and you would be really questioning if you are outsourcing your IT and they don't hold that. So it's really looking at it very much supplier by supplier and what you think you require to manage that risk or uncertainty within your supply chain. Complete due diligence. We talk about it all the time, but taking that time with those critical suppliers, building that relationship, supporting them. So if they are a smaller supplier, maybe there's only one that you can work with. They're a small supplier, they're not able to invest, they don't have the experience. By collaborating with them and building that relationship, it's great for your relationship in getting your parts on time and building that long-standing relationship, but you potentially can also help them to strengthen their security, which means that you're also protecting your own security as a byproduct of that. Request evidence from your suppliers and regarding to their approach to cybersecurity. Help them to understand how the certifications work, why it's worthwhile them considering it, and perform regular reviews. It's true that things can change over time. When we do any kind of check, we maybe do a financial check once a year. A lot can happen in that 12-month period, and it's very much true from a cyber risk point of view. It is something that is changing every day, and while technology and certifications are doing their best to keep up, bear in mind that that certification could have been done 11 months ago. A lot could have changed in their environment, and that's also true of those that don't hold certifications. In closing, supply chain risk is a current and serious issue across the world. The automotive sector is a significant target. Most sectors see human error ahead of cyber attacks. We normally see about 60% being attributed to humans and around 40% being attributed to cyber attacks. Yet the ICO is reporting that is the other way around for manufacturing and retail, that they bundle together. They're seeing around 60% of them are cyber related attacks, and a good portion of those are connected to ransomware. As I mentioned earlier, there is a separate webinar that talks much more about the types of attacks that are happening every day for all sectors, but it has a lot of the stats in there to help you to understand where that risk is sitting. So if you want to dig a little bit further, I'd recommend that you double back into that recording. The automotive industry recognised themselves way back in 2017 and introduced TISAC across the EU. If we look at Cyber Essentials, it was reduced in 2024. So the automotive sector was ahead of its time in recognising there was a problem with supply chain way before the rest of the world caught up. And at that point, Cyber Essentials was still very much a baby, and it was still just being embraced by the UK. So they do recognise, and they've done a great job with TISAC in bringing something to life that is relevant for the automotive sector, and has real value in managing your supply chain and being able to meet those demands. When you consider risk, there are only three choices. You can accept it and play the game of, I hope it doesn't happen. What I will say is that cyber attacks are happening every minute of every day. And if you talk to your IT, either in-house or external, they'll tell you just how many emails are being stopped coming into your organization. As a group of family of businesses, Net Defence sits in, we see around 350,000 emails a month being stopped from coming into our organization. And we've got about 550 employees across the group. So you can see just that level that's happening all day, every day. Your next option is mitigation. So that is to do something. And mitigation can absolutely be done through different certifications, through Cyber Essentials, ISO and TISAC. It's really going to tell you where the vulnerabilities and where the risks sit, and what you can do about it. And the final thing is that you can transfer that risk. Since data protection was brought in, it took away our ability to outsource our risk. The only way to transfer risk these days is through insurance. Cyber insurance itself has gone through a huge change in the past few years. If we were to look back about 2 years ago, it was almost impossible to get your hands on good quality cyber insurance. That has meant a lot of new vendors and providers have come to the market, meaning that it is now becoming more affordable, and it is becoming more attainable for organizations to go out and get cyber insurance. Very much so. And it's a surprise when you see that the claims that are going through on cyber insurance have exponentially grown in that same period of time. So it's unusual for an insurance industry, for insurance to become cheaper at the time when more claims are being made and more claims are being paid out. The automotive industry is one of the most complex and interconnected sectors. It certainly surprised me when I did all of the research ahead of these webinars. When you consider your supply chain, you need to not only think about who supplies you, but also who you supply to and what your contractual obligations are to them. A hit to anybody in your supply chain could be catastrophic to you and also your ability to continue to operate. The final point I wanted to talk about today is we do have a technology partner that we work really closely with. They're called High Comply. They're based in the region as well. They're a compliance management software provider. Their ethos is to provide a solution that automates and fast tracks compliance, eliminates risk, and gives you a competitive edge. They already consistently support both us and other companies across the world for that ISO 27001 certification, and they have TISAC in their platform. So that is very much, it's due a refresh. But we're working closely with them to see if that's something that we can help bring out to the NEAA and see if that's of value to their members. I would say that if you have any questions, you will find Craig Whiteman, who works for us, in your network, and he's mad keen to spend some time with anybody that wants to talk through any of this, and not just from a sales point of view, just where we can help and support and educate, and try and help all of us stay safe and avoid the nasty cyber attacks that are unfortunately happening all of the time. So it's really just then if anybody had any questions.